President Trump is coming from a first choice of always being peace and diplomacy, and if the Iranians would engage and be serious about resolving this conflict, they would find a willing partner in the United States of America. But, Iran continues to choose violence, continues to attack ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz, and so they're going to reap the consequences. And if they hit us like you saw over the weekend, we're going to hit them back 10 times harder.
And that's U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker with me yesterday on this program. CENTCOM confirming that it completed its 10th consecutive night of strikes on Iran overnight. The Trump administration targeting Iranian military infrastructure as potential regime change in Tehran is now reportedly back on the agenda. The Pentagon confirming the identity of the 2 soldiers killed in an Iranian attack at a military base in Jordan over the weekend. The Wall Street Journal reporting that the missile hit housing units where the troops lived and slept. Meanwhile, the Houthis in Yemen imposing a maritime blockade on Saudi Arabia in response to recent attacks on the Yemeni capital. It puts the flow of Saudi oil through the Red Sea now potentially in question. Joining me now is Heritage Foundation Vice President of National Security and former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump, Victoria Coates, back with us. Victoria, thanks so much for being here. What are your thoughts on the potential for an oil issue in the Red Sea as a result of the Saudi-Yemeni fight?
Well, good morning, Maria. Yeah, this is potentially a significant disruption because, as we've discussed, the Saudis are running about 5 million barrels a day through their Petroline pipeline across the peninsula into the Red Sea, and that's about a quarter of what normally comes out of the Persian Gulf. So that's been a significant mitigating factor. And if the Houthi were to disrupt that, obviously it would be a significant problem. But at the same time, it's not clear what the Houthi are going to do precisely here. There are some reports of disruptions inside Yemen. There's a new armed group called the Free Yemen Movement. We don't know much about them. It's unlikely that they're George Washington in the Continental Army, but at the same time, it suggests that the Houthi are not firmly in control of Yemen and may be limited in what they can actually implement.
Victoria, what are your thoughts on this upcoming meeting? The president is set to meet with the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, today. I know that you are also meeting with the president of Lebanon. Did you have that meeting yet? What are your expectations with the president of Lebanon and President Trump?
Yes, this is a historic meeting, and we did meet with him yesterday. And President Aoun is well known to many in Washington. He's the former head of the LAF. They were our partners in the fight against ISIS in Lebanon, very good counterterrorism partners along those lines, but have historically been limited in what they could do given the presence of Hezbollah in Lebanon. But President Aoun, he's a Christian president, part of the factions within Lebanon, is really, I think, doing a lot of things right. He has been engaging in judicial reform, disrupting smuggling, taking over a lot of the services that Hezbollah used to provide. And we've had a really important benchmark, Maria, in the last day, with Israel starting to withdraw from what they're calling these kind of pilot villages, where the LAF, the Lebanese Armed Forces, can come in and take over the security from the Israelis and start to really govern southern Lebanon. So this could be an incredible moment. We're looking for, more benchmarks in the security situation. Also see if we're going to start talking about reconstruction in Lebanon, maybe an international conference. And finally, Secretary Rubio started talking about direct flights to Lebanon after his meeting with the president over the weekend. We haven't had those since the 1980s. This would be huge for Lebanon, given the large diaspora we have in the United States. These people could then travel much more easily back home and be wonderful for Lebanon and for its economy.
It's interesting. This meeting is so important. Also important was the meeting that the president had with the prime minister of Iraq, which was not talked about much. What are these meetings yielding for this war on Iran?
Well, what it's yielding is a very isolated Iran, because bear in mind, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon were 5 years ago henchmen of Iran. Right. They were how they engaged with the international economy. They were how their major trading partners. Now they're all uniting with the United States. And Secretary Chris Wright announced $60 billion in new energy deals between American majors and the Iraqis, and that's huge. That's great for the U.S. economy. That's great for our energy security. It diversifies the supply. And I think, with Iraq, they should think big. Prime Minister al-Zaidi is starting some really good reforms going after the corruption in Baghdad. That's good. But why don't we think huge? Why don't they get out of OPEC, follow UAE, ramp up their production in conjunction with those American companies? And then how about get into the Abraham Accords? Look again at UAE, the prosperity the Abraham Accords have brought to the Emirates. They've been great. So let's look for some big, bold moves out of Iraq that are very good for the United States and terrible for Iran.
Very good point on the Abraham Accords. Victoria, President Trump, meanwhile, fired back at New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani after Mamdani claimed that he would arrest Bibi Netanyahu when and if he gets to the UN General Assembly in September. The president wrote on Truth Social last night, Benjamin Netanyahu will not be arrested in any way while in the United States. The only ones who should be arrested are those who led Iran into this spiral of death and destruction. Mamdani, though, doubled down on the threat yesterday. Watch this.
When it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu, we're speaking about someone who's the subject of an international criminal court arrest warrant. And he's the subject of this arrest warrant for alleged crimes against humanity, for war crimes, and he's the architect of the genocide against Palestinians in Gaza as Israel's prime minister. These are not facts of my personal assessment, they are facts of public record. And I believe that when someone is charged with an international criminal court warrant, it's something that should be taken seriously.
Well, Victoria, he's been mocked all over the place for this assessment. Your reaction?
Well, I'd hate to pile on the mayor, but I think maybe he needs to get himself a law degree before he starts weighing in on these issues and maybe figure out that the United States is not a signatory to the International Criminal Court, that their inquiry, or whatever it may be, has absolutely no validity here in the United States, where we're governed by the Constitution and the government of the United States. So this is just empty posturing. He's trying to insert himself on the international stage, threaten a world leader like Prime Minister Netanyahu, try to disrupt the diplomatic outreach that the administration is doing, trying to bring peace to that region. So it's just unfortunate. I think he has plenty to do in New York, as you guys must know better than I, cleaning up the city, getting after some of the problems there, and he should probably leave international diplomacy to the Secretary of State.
All right, Victoria, we'll be watching all of that. Great to see you this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Victoria Coates joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.